Hello, guys.
Professional communication is not about being smart. It is about being understood clearly, confidently, and respectfully. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Ishani Saraswat. I head Amity Finishing School and I'm also the Deputy Director at Amity Finishing School. I am an expert in the field of business communication, communication skills. I'm a corporate trainer and I help people transform holistically. I am here today
Hello,
to
Ujjwal.
talk to
Double
you
tap कर दो.
about the most important element in a person's personal as well as professional life, and which is
प्रोफेशनल
communication
कम्युनिकेशन का
skills.
स्किल है.
Albert Mehrabian once said that out of the
डेली मैं
100%
इसी टाइम पे
communication
आऊंगी
that we
यूजुअल.
do,
ठीक है, डेली इसी
93%
टाइम पे
of it
क्लासेस
is
ज्वाइन कर लेना.
completely non-verbal
ओके.
in nature. So that means that it is just 7% of the words that make a difference. And we spend all our lives focusing on the words. However, we forget that out of the 93% of the non-verbal communication, 55% is visual, what we see, which we call body language in a layman's term. And 38% is the tone of the voice. So what you say, yes, makes a difference, but how you say that makes more of a difference. Have you ever wondered that when
ओके उज्जवल, कहाँ
you
हो
see
तुम
a
अभी?
person entering the room, some people make that powerful first impression that lasts in
ब्रो
your
1
mind
kg
for a
नहीं,
very
1
long
k.
time. Whereas, on the other hand,
थैंक
there
यू.
could be a
1 k
person
ही नहीं,
at a
2
good
प्लस भी है.
designation who walks into
चेक
a
करो
room,
ठीक से.
fails to make the first impression. The power of first impression does not lie completely in the words that we speak. It lies in what we communicate without using words, which
गाइस
is
जो भी
the
जुड़े
power
हैं
of
मैसेज
non-verbal
कमेंट
communication.
करते रहिए.
When we talk about communication skills, it can be broadly classified as verbal communication, non-verbal communication, written communication. Within that, formal and informal communication. So here I am today. I will be discussing various aspects of communication skills, specifically professional communication, through the medium of case studies. So I hope you are with me on this journey to explore various facets of the most powerful tool, which is communication skills. I will first begin with my case study. What happened in 2017 was United Airlines, an American airline company, had to ask 4 people to deboard a flight for
तृप्ति
which they
मिश्रा,
had
क्या
already
दिस
paid
दिस.
the money.
हेलो तृप्ति.
Because
हेलो उज्जवल.
4 crew members
डबल
of their
टैप करिए
airlines had to be
अपने स्क्रीन
transported
पे,
from
और
one
जिन्होंने
place to another
सब्सक्राइब नहीं
so
किया है
that they
चैनल
could
को
resume their
वो
tickets.
सब्सक्राइब करें.
So 3 people out of the 4 passengers came out unwillingly. But the fourth
और
one
डेली
was
लाइव का
doctor,
डेली
and
का
the doctor had
ब्लॉग भी
resumed
डल
his
चुका है,
services the
तो
next day,
उसको भी आप
and
लोग
he
देख
refused
सकते
to
हैं.
get off the flight.
इंस्टा आईडी पे
As
भी
a result, the
ब्लॉग
crew
विद सुरभि,
members
फेसबुक
followed
आईडी भी है
protocol
सुरभि मिश्रा के नाम
and
से,
they forcibly
और
asked him to leave the flight.
यहाँ भी
When the
है.
doctor
जिन्होंने
refused,
सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया है
they
वो सब्सक्राइब भी
pulled
कर
him
लें और डबल
and
टैप करते
they
रहिए
even
स्क्रीन
hurt
पे
him in the
ताकि
process.
लाइक का ऑप्शन
This
आएगा और लाइक
brought
बढ़ेगा
about
मेरा.
a global outrage and condemned the United Airlines. The verbal message of the airlines was that
स्क्रीन पे डबल
protocols
टैप करिए.
come before anything else. We were just doing our duty. We were following what the rules are supposed to mean. But on the other hand, the non-verbal message which they conveyed was absolutely the opposite. Dragging a passenger out of an airliner is not a very respectable thing to do. So after this outrage, when this video went viral,
जो
the
जो लाइव
CEO
से जुड़े
next
हुए
day
हैं
sent
कमेंट
out a
करते
message,
रहिए.
and in a tone which sounded more robotic than ever. And what he said was that re-accommodating passengers. This did not go well for the airlines, and the airlines faced further outrage. As a result, the CEO had to give another
स्क्रीन
statement
पे
to
डबल
raise
टैप
income.
करिए.
They
जो
then revised
लोग
the
जुड़े हुए हैं,
policies.
8 लोग
They
हैं,
trained their personnel
लोग.
in crisis management. They made sure that all the passengers were
ये
treated
खुद
with
बता रही है,
respect,
क्वेश्चन भी बता
and
रही है,
they
आप लोगों को
made sure that
एक्सप्लेन भी कर रही है.
empathy
इसी से मैं
superseded
पढ़ती
all
हूँ, इसी से
protocols
मैं पढ़
and
रही हूँ.
procedures. So, what is the message that we get from this case study? Number one, communication is the key in all businesses and all professions. The non-verbal message was a complete opposite of the verbal message. So that means when I say something, it should also reflect in my actions. You must have noticed at times that there is somebody who's complimenting you, and the person says, "Oh my God, you look so smart." But the manner in which that person says, you really don't believe him or her because there is a mismatch.
हाय
So
उज्जवल,
I
हेलो.
could say a word as
स्क्रीन पे
rude
डबल
as
टैप
shut
करिए.
up, and I could say it in so many
और
different
जिन्होंने
ways.
चैनल को
I could say
सब्सक्राइब नहीं
shut
किया है,
up.
वो चैनल को
I could say
सब्सक्राइब करें.
shut up, or I could say shut up. The word remains the same, but the manner in which I say that word corresponding to my body language, that completes the process of communication. So make sure that what you say, you mean, and the same expressions are reflected on your face. Moving on now, we live in the virtual world today. I'm sure most of you are working professionals, or even if you are students, you attend virtual meetings on a daily basis. We all do. The benefit of virtual meetings is that it saves us a lot of time and commutation time, and of course money and many other things. But the downside of virtual meetings is that at times we are unable to gauge and to notice and understand the expressions of people who are logged in on a Skype or a Zoom call. So in a similar instant, what happened was, I'm talking of Google. Google has employees from all over the world. And there was a project in which we had Japanese employees, we had Indians, and we had American employees. Now, before I delve into the case study, let me give you a little brief about how culture plays a very important role in communication. So what happened was that after the Britishers left the colonized countries, some countries
जिन्होंने चैनल को सब्सक्राइब नहीं
retained
किया
their
है,
own
चैनल को
culture,
सब्सक्राइब
imbibed
करिए
something from the British culture, and
और डेली का
you know,
ब्लॉग
their
देखिए.
culture was revisited. But they had their own cultural values intact. For example, most of the Asian
स्क्रीन पे डबल
countries,
टैप भी करिए.
India, Japan, Middle East, we fall in that category. Whereas on the other hand, we had countries who could not retain their own culture. Therefore, they developed a whole new culture. And those countries came to be known as the low context based nations. So when we talk about countries like us, we are high context based nations. The difference is that it's not just a terminology. The difference lies in the way we communicate, in the way we send non-verbal messages, our outlook towards money, our personal spaces, the tone, so on and so forth. So, coming back to this case study, we had two employees from the countries like India and Japan, which are both
नोबेल्स ऑबलिंग करके हैं. आप क्या कहना चाह रहे हैं? आपकी बात समझ में नहीं आ रही. इंडियन लैंग्वेज.
So when they started
मतलब ये
interacting
इंग्लिश
over
में बात
Skype
कर रही है.
calls, over online meetings, what was observed was that the Japanese, they nodded and they smiled. They did not give too many inputs. So when a Japanese would nod, the Americans perceived that they were okay with whatever work was being given to them, and it was perceived as a positive message. Whereas in the same meeting,
Okay.
Indians did not give too many inputs.
समझ
And the
गई.
reason for that was out of respect and out of hierarchy, they did not want to give too many opinions or make too many interruptions in the meeting. But the downside of all these meetings was that the
तो क्या
deadlines were
करूं
not
मैं
met.
उज्जवल इसके
People did
लिए?
not finish their work on time, and there was a huge miscommunication or a gap in communication. So when Google thought about it, when they gave it a thought, they understood that our employees, number one, need to be trained on cross-cultural communication. wherein they should develop cultural sensitivity, understand the backgrounds from which the other team members come in, and also understand the non-verbal cues of different countries. So they started training their employees on intercultural communication, which was one. And second, they also devised a method of giving feedback, because it wasn't just in the meetings that the people would talk. Over and above the meetings, they made a process in a way that people could give their feedback, and they started sharing the meeting agenda, the minutes of the meeting, and the recordings to people who could not attend the meeting. So this did bring about a lot of change in the style of communication and in the delivery of the people who were associated with Google and that project. So now you must have understood that becoming culturally sensitive plays a very major role in communication. And this also brings me to another fact, another aspect of communication, more so formal communication, that when communication flows in an organization, in a formal environment, it follows a direction. So formal communication is either vertical or it is horizontal. So when I say vertical, what I mean is that every company has a hierarchy. It has a designation. So there is a boss, above that we have another boss. So we could start from the very low, the lowest in the chain of hierarchy, let's say management interns, and we could go up to CEO, COO. Every organization has a different hierarchy and structure. But what we need to understand is that when we communicate formally, we do not bypass the hierarchy. So if a management intern is supposed to report to a team leader and he or she bypasses that and reports directly to the manager, the communication is bound to fail. Why? Because the missing loop in the communication is that the team leader should also have known about whatever problems the management intern faced. So bypassing hierarchy is not good in formal communication. And then there is this horizontal way in which we communicate, which is usually interdepartmental. So a sales manager can directly communicate with a marketing manager. They are at the same level of hierarchy. That is also how communication flows in formal environments. Now, I'm sure you all know, and we all implement that as well. When you work in an organization, it is not just the formal communication that happens every day, right? It is something more, which is informal or which is social communication. And what is social communication? Social communication is also a form of building rapport. It is the way we have small talks with people. It is the way we try and understand their backgrounds, their challenges. And once we interact with people in a social scenario, we become more sensitized. We understand the communication barriers better, and therefore it helps in the smooth functioning of the organizations. So being socially active and being able to communicate in a social scenario is important. You can do this through the medium of small talks. You can help build rapport with people, and you can take the communication further. So in a similar scenario, what happened was once two black men had to be removed from a Starbucks store in Philadelphia. And the background is that two people were in the store, but they were not shopping. And one of them asked to use the restroom. The manager pointed out that they were supposed to shop while they were in the store, but they said that they were waiting for a friend of theirs. The manager did not understand that and, in fact, called the police and reported the black man. This tarnished the image of Starbucks. Starbucks had to shut down 8,000 stores up there. The very next day, their CEO, Kevin Johnson, came up with a statement, apologized, and said that this was not a case of racial biasness, but probably some miscommunication, social miscommunication that had happened. So you can imagine, today we live in a world of social media. Everything goes viral. Anything and everything that happens around us is all over the internet. And that will cost companies a lot. So what was the end result of this? that Starbucks started training their employees on cross-cultural communication, number one, and they started training them in social communication so that they could interact with people from different races and not be biased and understand the whole communication and then take action. You know, when we talk about this social communication or this informal communication that I am mentioning about, a very important factor of active listening comes in. So if I go out and if I ask anybody today, are you a good listener? The person will say, yes, of course, I listen. I listen to my managers, I listen to my family members, I listen to my friends. Friends, listening and active listening are two very different things. The problem with us is that we don't listen to understand. We listen to react. What that manager did was, he probably was listening to those people, but he did not try and understand their situation. What he did was, he reacted. So today, when somebody comes to you and tells you their problem, what we usually do is, we listen to the person, we listen to the problem, but we give them a solution. Nobody asks us for a solution all the time. People talk because they want to share. People talk because they want to communicate, because they want to be heard. Our role as listeners should be to understand the tone of the person, the material that is being shared with us, the background, and why did such an incident occur. And if somebody asks you for your suggestion, that is when you give them a suggestion. Otherwise, the best way of listening and interacting with people is nod your head, smile, repeat the last line that the person has said so that he or she feels that you are trying to understand the problem, and then just listen to them and maybe empathize with them. And only if they ask you for a suggestion, give your suggestion. So I'm sure now you can go back and you can implement active listening. You can take care of your non-verbal communication. You can take care of your verbal communication, the barriers, and cross-cultural communication. Moving on to my next section now, I want to talk to you about our email writing, the tone that we use in our emails, the jargons that we use, the clarity which is missing in our emails, and how we are unable to let the other person know what our intention is. Please understand that written communication is far more powerful than verbal communication. Why? One of the reasons is that it can serve as an evidence. People could go back, they can quote the email that you wrote to them, they can quote whatever you wanted to tell them, and they can quote and misquote more, right? So when we talk about the tone, we use a friendly tone. Make sure you don't use too many jargons. When I say jargons, I mean industry-specific words. Use courtesy throughout your email. Ask for a response and thank people in the end. Your formal email should not exceed 2 paragraphs, maximum 3, wherein you divide your email with the clarity of purpose, supporting details, facts and figures, and the expected outcome or the result of the email. So what happened was, once Elon Musk wrote an email to his Tesla employees that used the word that the employees should be working hardcore. And the email created a lot of confusion among the employees. Instead of bringing about clarity, it added more to the confusion. The reason was that the tone of the email could not be understood. Many people got intimidated, got scared, thinking that the message that has come in is specifically for them. And if they don't work hardcore, probably they would lose their jobs. The intention of that email, however, was not to create terror. But the other problem was that very heavy jargons were used in that email. And many people could not understand the jargons, which were more industry specific, and therefore that added more to the confusion. So Tesla reviewed the reason behind the confusion, the reason behind the fear in the employees, And what they did was they came up with simpler policies. Number one, they installed a feedback method. So when the employees received that email, they did not know how to reply to it. They did not know how to give the feedback because they were not supposed to do that. So that is why when they started discussing things amongst themselves, there were 100 interpretations. And they did not know whom to go to for the right interpretation of that email. So after that, a feedback system was devised. The coaches or the leaders were given training on coaching people in giving the correct feedback and interpreting emails, and heavy emails, jargon-loaded emails were stopped. So what my point here is that students, communication is indispensable as a tool. Be it your verbal communication or your non-verbal or your written communication. There will be barriers, but we have to understand how to overcome those barriers. For example, some of the barriers that we face that we spoke of while I was discussing the Google case study was the technical barrier. Because they were in an online conversation, the non-verbal cues could not be caught. Smiles, subtle cues, people could not understand that. So technology can be a barrier. Listening becomes a barrier when we have perceptions. So the incident at Starbucks that happened where two black men were arrested, it was perhaps there was some kind of a bias or a racial bias that existed in the minds of the managers. A barrier could also be in the form of a barrier where we use jargons. So when the message is not clear right in that email, there is bound to be miscommunication. So there could be a social barrier. There could be a barrier which is a psychological barrier where you have a perception, a fixed perception about your boss. For example, you're sitting in a meeting and you feel that whenever you make a point, your boss does not listen. Whereas that could simply be a perception in your head. And if that is not a perception, and if you feel that is happening, then you must walk up to the boss and ask politely. Maybe there is something in your communication that needs to be reviewed, right? In the end, before I sum up, I want to reiterate that 7 principles of communication, verbal communication, are something that you must remember at all points in time. And they are also famously known as the 7 C's of communication, which are clarity, conciseness, completeness, concreteness, courtesy, candidness, and correctness. So these 7 C's sum up the entire process of communication. The staff at McDonald's, they keep receiving the award of the most courteous staff year after year because McDonald's spends a lot of money in training their employees on courtesy, on candidness, on clarity, on completeness, and other aspects of communication. So, my dear friends, after listening to me, I am sure you will take a moment to review yourselves and specifically your communication style. Remember that you are dealing with people. And when I say people, I mean that you need to be conscious of your non-verbal communication at all times. The first thing that you must maintain is a good posture, a straight back, your shoulders rolled backwards, a head held high, chin parallel to the ground. When you walk, walk with confidence, take longer steps, keep your palms open, and when you communicate, make sure that you don't cross your hands, your palms, or your lips, because that can be perceived as a barrier to communication. Second, maintain eye contact. When I say eye contact, I do not mean keep looking into the eyes of a person constantly. That can become intimidating. So when you look into the eyes of a person, after that, for a few seconds, maintain eye contact and then look towards the forehead. This is popularly known as the triangle of respect. From the eyes towards the forehead, it means that when you do this, you are trying to be respectful towards other people. The third thing that you need to remember is maintain your space. There are some people who just walk so close to you that you become intimidated and you don't know how to react. And there's some people who will stand so far away from you that you would not be able to interpret or even listen to them. Remember that we are all surrounded with souls, intimate soul, personal soul, social soul, and public soul. So when you deal with somebody professionally, try and stand in their personal soul, which is from within 18 inches and 4 feet. So around you, after 18 inches to 4 feet is called the personal zone. We do a handshake with that. We share business cards in that. And that is what is the ideal distance you maintain while talking to people. Make sure your accessories are proper at all times. That means the colors that you wear, the frame of your spectacles, the position of your tie, the nail paint, the earrings, all of that, they play a very vital role in making your first impression. Also understand the
Hello,
tone of
Ujjwal.
your voice is the most important factor in deciding the result of your communication.
स्क्रीन पे
Our
डबल
tone
टैप
defines
करिए.
our mood. Tone is also called intonation. So a tone could be an indicator of your mood and your intentions. So if I have to say that I hate you, and I say to you, I hate you, the person is going to take it seriously. Why? Because of my tone. So when you usually use statements, use a rising tone. Go up. For example, this is a table. This is a window. What a nice sunny day.
जिन्होंने चैनल
So
को
my tone
सब्सक्राइब
goes
नहीं किया है,
up.
चैनल को
From a lower
सब्सक्राइब
level,
करें
it goes
और
up.
डबल
That's
टैप
called a
करें
rising
स्क्रीन पे.
tone. And when I ask a
डेली
question,
ब्लॉग आता है,
my
इसको
tone
व्यू
should go
करें,
down, which is called a falling tone. For
लाइक
example,
करें, शेयर करें,
how are
सब्सक्राइब
you?
करें.
How have you been? Are you okay? Not something like, are you okay? How have you been? Right? So these are small little things that you can implement in your daily conversation. In the end, I want to tell you about the power of a handshake. We all shake hands on a daily basis. But what we forget is that it is not just a form of greeting. It talks a lot about your personality, your intentions, and your relationships in future with the other person. Make sure when you shake hands, you shake a hand firmly. The web of your hand meets the web of the other person's hand. Do not move your fingers or your thumb unnecessarily. Look into the eyes of the person, smile, and do not bump the hand more than twice. If you're very happy to meet the other person, do it 3 times, but don't do more than that. It becomes a bit too much and it becomes unprofessional. This is all from my side. I hope I have been able to add value to your existing knowledge. Remember, there is no substitute to good communication, and communication is an ever-changing game, and you evolve every single day. Be conscious of your non-verbal communication. Mind your words. Be conscious of your verbal communication. And when you write down, make sure you are sending the right message that you actually intend to send to other people. And be culturally sensitive to the people you meet on a daily basis. Thank you.
ओके गाइस, तो ये हमारा हो गया प्रोफेशनल कम्युनिकेशन. आज का पहला क्लास था ये. कल फिर मैं दूसरे क्लास के साथ आऊँगी. दूसरा लेसन होगा. तो आप लोग कल फिर सेम टाइम पे ज्वाइन कीजिए 10 o'clock. और जिन्होंने चैनल को सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया है वो चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें, लाइक करें, शेयर करें. ओके, देन गुड नाइट, बाय बाय, शुभ रात्रि, सबा खैर, टाटा. Okay, bye bye, guys.